Connect to the cloud. Okay. Yes, already. Hello, welcome to our webinar, Introduction to Job Crafting. That we have anyone in the room right now. Welcome, Vanessa. Welcome to my twins is here. Welcome, Mia from Greatory. Yes, welcome, Nancy. Okay, so hello everyone, I'm Mia. So it's my pleasure for me today for being the host. So we have Mr. Dan Van Rossum, the Chief Experience Officer at Trimble. Hello, Dan. Okay. Yes, and also we have Mr. Rob Baker, our special guest for today. He's in the rooms already, so feel free to say hi to him. Hey, you can type in the chat box. Yes. And while waiting for everyone to join, I will ask a few questions to our guests. So for someone who doesn't know about Rob information, he is the founder and chief positive deviant at Taylor Thinking, a leading evidence-based positive psychology, well-being, and HR consultancy. So Rob is also a writer of the best-selling book. So the book is winning the prize for the best business book in 2020, Personalization at Work. So congratulations, Rob.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Yes, and the title of the book is Personalization at Work. So how HR can use job crafting to drive performance, engagement, and well-being. So today he is joining us virtually from the UK to share his knowledge. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And it's a real pleasure to be talking to everyone today. And I think it's amazing that you put these events on for members. I wish I had the opportunity to connect and hear about these kind of activities. So I think it's lovely what you're doing, and I'm glad to be able to share some ideas with you today. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So welcome, Rob. And I have a few questions for you. First thing is that I'm really curious about your title, Chief Positive Deviant. So can you share a little bit about this?
Yeah, so my job title is Chief Positive Deviant, and this is because I'm really interested in positive psychology, and I've studied positive psychology. And one of the concepts that I came across in terms of positive psychology was positive deviance. And people and organizations can be positively deviant in two ways. So one is in terms of deviantly in terms of their performance. So maybe they outperform other people. And by deviant, it means they're distinctive and different from others. So they are kind of maybe high performers. And I'm particularly interested in people who are high performers because they do things in positive and different ways. So they have different or deviant behavior. So in terms of maybe taking approaches that are people focused or strengths based, or finding ways to engage people within their organization, these are things that maybe not every organization is doing. So I'm really interested in encouraging people to think differently about work and doing that so that it can lead to differences in terms of their individual, team, or organizational performance. So that's where positive deviance comes from.
Wow, so inspiring. So another question I want to ask you is that I heard that you throw these questions to everyone that you met, including in the podcast. Is that like, what do you love about your job?
What do I love about that's a good question. So the thing that I love about doing my job is hearing stories about how people have applied science and evidence to practice. So I'm lucky to speak to organizations and work with them to apply ideas and knowledge, such as job crafting, which we'll talk about today. But the thing that I love the most, the thing that excites me the most, is when I hear stories of how people have taken an idea that I've shared with them and that I've kind of communicated, and then they've made it their own. They've somehow found ways to kind of bring this to life in their own jobs or across their team. So that's the thing that I love the most. So I love learning from other organizations. I love speaking to organizations, but my favorite thing to do, Mia, is to hear stories of how people have brought some of the ideas that I'm passionate about to life.
Oh, look like you're having a dream job, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So okay, we'll get back to you later because we have Dan here. So hello, Dan. How are you today? Are you excited?
I am beyond excited. Why I'm excited? I'm very excited because Rob and I were just talking yesterday, and we were talking about how did I even come across job crafting to start with. And I remember doing some research in the field of positive psychology and thinking about, what really drives people, what really motivates people, especially at work. And job crafting came up as one of the things. And I'm sure Rob will talk a lot about this, but it really gets into people's motivation and how quickly they lose motivation when they start a new job. It may sound really exciting, kind of the job description, the position on paper, but then you go into the organization, you start doing your work, and then you start to realize what is it really like. And then you have the feeling, okay, maybe there's not really a match between what I am passionate about, what I want to do, and this job. And this happens a lot because companies are typically just really bad at writing job descriptions. But then kind of there's two ways you can go. You can either kind of say, okay, there's clearly not a fit between me and the job and leave and find a new job, right? Especially Gen Zers are really good at this. Or you can maybe see, is there room within that sort of job to alter it so that it does fit better what you want to do? And so I'm really excited now. We've been practicing job crafting at Dreamplex for, basically since I started. I'm really excited to kind of now bring this to a broader audience and kind of introduce it to our members as one of the key ways to engage and retain the best talent.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Dan, for your sharing. But I would love to ask you a few questions. Is that Dreamplex aims to bring a better day at work to all the employees? So, why job planning? Why personalization at work is so important?
Well, again, I definitely don't want to steal from all the material that Rob is going to take us through. So I will just apply it just directly to kind of like our circumstance. So for us, and Rob and I talked a little bit yesterday, is really that I think in Vietnam, there is sometimes a really big gap between what you learn in university and then what you actually need in your job. And again, a very big gap between what you expect to get out of a role and then what it actually is. And so I think, the new generation, like Gen Z and millennial to a degree also, could really benefit from personalization. So I think that's why, we're really excited to invite Rob today.
Okay, thank you. So the same to myself, Rob. Like I'm a Gen Z, so I always told everyone is that like the way that the more that you personalize your work, the more you own it, the more you will feel like the life is more meaningful. Yeah, so I'm totally into this topic for today. So I think yes. So I think let's get back to you for some information and for some knowledge that you can share with all the
Yeah,
audience
sure.
for
I'll
today.
be delighted to that. And I'm happy I know we've got time for questions at the end, but just as I'm talking today, so a few things. So one, I get very excited talking about job crafting and I talk quickly. So if anyone feels that I'm talking at any point in time too quickly, then you can please say on the chat to say, Rob, slow down a little bit. And maybe if I don't see it, then me or Dan, you can tell me to slow down. So please do that. Secondly, that if people have got questions or want to raise a hand as we're going through, I'm very happy to do that. There will be opportunities for questions at the end, but I'm happy if someone wants to raise a question as we're going through, and we'll do that. I will be encouraging people to answer some questions on the chat. So if people can do that, use the chat function on the Zoom that we're using today, that would be great as well to get some audience participation. And we will potentially, depending how we're doing for time and whether there's interest, we might play with an exercise later on a whiteboard as well today, so just to see if that works for people. So I hope that sounds okay for people. And what I'll do now, Mia, I'll share my screens and I will kick off. So we'll talk for about 35 minutes now, 30 to 45 minutes, just in terms of job crafting. We'll have a few pauses for breath as I'm going through. So just let me share my screen. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm kind of Rob Baker. So I'm speaking to you in the UK, in the northeast of England, in Durham, and my kind of passion, as Mia's already asked about, is around bringing ideas from positive psychology and wellbeing science to workplaces. And my my kind of interest is speaking to organizations and working out practical ways for people to make work better, and by extension of that, people make people's lives better through their work. And so if you're, I'm very happy and welcome you all the opportunity to follow me on Twitter or for LinkedIn, and please connect with me if you're interested in some of the ideas that I'm sharing. I'd love to hear more about hear more from you, and to stay in touch. I'll send you through the slide decks from these presentations for those who are interested to it. There's some references here. I've also added some additional guides for you in terms of resources, so that if you want to follow up on everything that we're doing today, then you can absolutely have the chance to do so. And Mia very kindly mentioned my book, so we're going to talk about a fraction about some of the ideas today around job crafting and personalization, and I've tried to do my best to kind of to bring all the research and all the knowledge and all these ideas into one place in this book, so personalization at work. And so if people are interested and curious about this, then look at the resources I've shared with you, but you might also, if you want to do a deeper delve into this concept, if you want to look at it in more detail, then the book might be a great starting point for you. So I'd start now by, on the chat function, can people tell me when they think this organizational chart was developed? So when was this, when do they think this chart was developed? If people can put in the chat function when they feel that this organization chart relates to. So thank you, Joe. You started in 1927. Dan, 2021, close. And so anyone else? I'll wait to see if anyone else has a guess of when this organization chart was developed. In 2019, yeah. So it's a good question. So this chart was actually developed in 1917. So it's over 104 years old now. And yet, as some of you have already said, it looks almost modern. So some of you have said it could be developed this millennium, the 2000s. And actually, the way that we look at organizations, the way we structure organizations hasn't changed much in over 110, 120 years. Yet if we look around us in terms of the way we think about work, the way we run our lives, if we look at technology, if we look at our needs, it's very, very different from when organizations were first structured. So when they were first developed, organizations were very top down in terms of their decision making, and very focused in terms of putting kind of people into specific roles and specific kind of boxes. And there was a good reason for doing this. So people put people into these boxes in terms of very, very clearly defined job descriptions, very clearly defined job roles. And they did this because they wanted to control people. So they wanted, if they said it was more effective and more efficient for us as leaders to tell other people to do exactly what we want them to do. And that we know that does work for a short period of time in terms of motivation. It does work in terms of actually getting people to produce kind of certain levels of outputs. But we also know that over time, being just told what to do and having no autonomy, having no discretion, not being able to personalize in your job, not being able to kind of customize in a way, can feel very constraining. So you can imagine you're being put in this box here, this glass box, and you can't get out of it. You're stuck, and you start feeling frustrated, and you start feeling maybe suffocated in terms of not being able to maybe apply your strengths, not being able to grow yourself or grow your jobs. And what happens when we put people in boxes is that the only way that they can find a new role or a new opportunity, and you may have seen this yourself as business founders or even as an employee yourself, the way that you get out of that box is by jumping out of it into another box. So you kind of say, the only way I can find growth or progression is by leaving my job and moving into a new job. And I know that, having spoken to Dan yesterday in Vietnam in particular, and we see this in the UK and the US as well, is a lot of people, particularly Gen Z, will look for new opportunities by moving from one job to the next. They'll hop from one job to the next. And obviously, as an organization, if you're trying to attract talent and retain talent, that can be very challenging for you, because you'll just train someone up, they'll get great skills, they're performing really well for you, and then they'll just jump onto the other role. So I think we need to smash through this glass blocks. We need to create opportunities for people to be able to personalize their jobs, so that people find growth from within their job, they can find development, they can find happiness from within their job, rather than having to kind of leave their existing job to find another one for that element of progression, for that satisfaction in what they're doing. Do people know where this city is? I wanted to give a shout out to this city, and I'll explain why. Can people on the chat, do people have a guess where this is? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's see if anyone can guess. Texas, that's good. That's a good guess. Yeah, so Ho Chi, that's good. So New York. So these are really good guesses. Thank you for this. India, yeah, another good. You probably, it's not so. One of the things I realized when I saw this picture, it's not super distinctive as a city. So this is actually Melbourne. So Melbourne in Australia, and I realized that there is the kind of a few of the towers out there, and the Albert Park is the thing that you're looking at, which is where they do the race course. So they build the racetrack on this park that you can see on the screen at the moment, and they race around the lake. And the reason I'm showing Melbourne here is because it's important to me in my job crafting story, this idea I'm going to talk to you about today. So I was in a lecture theatre 6 years ago. I spent my life working in human resources, which is around trying to, and the way that I see human resources and engagement is around enabling people to perform at their best. I've always been interested how individuals, teams and organizations perform at their best, perform optimally. What are the factors and science that went behind this? And I was sitting at the lecture theatre in Swan Street at the top of this building, and I'd received a lecture from Gavin Slemp, who's a lecturer at the University of Melbourne Centre of Positive Psychology. And he just introduced an idea to the class. And this was an idea that had been studied for over 15 years. It had over 110 kind of peer-reviewed academic papers written about it. And these papers showed positive outcomes when it came to job satisfaction, well-being, engagement, buffering stress, retention, amazing outcomes, all things that I was kind of thought I was looking for, yet I'd never heard of this idea before. And this idea was job crafting, which we'll talk about today. And pretty much ever since I heard and discovered job crafting 6 years ago, I've been researching, I've been exploring, I've been writing about job crafting with organizations. And I'm going to talk to you about share some of those stories and those ideas today. So this is a picture that I took that I think nicely sums up job crafting. I took this in a clothes shop in Newcastle, and the badge on the lapel of the jacket says, "Tailor me to make me more you." It was advertising the fact that you could personalize and tailor the jacket to make it fit your individual dimension. So they would kind of measure you, and they'd make changes to the sleeve and maybe make changes to the other overall size of the jacket to make sure that it was a really good fit for you as an individual. So it looked great and it felt great too for the jacket. What this jacket wasn't, when you were purchasing the jacket, you weren't changing the style of the jacket, you weren't changing the fabric of it, you weren't changing kind of what it looked like fundamentally, but you were tweaking, making small changes to it. And the same applies to job crafting. You can bring this semi-tailored approach to work. So with job crafting, you're not asking your employees, or you're not yourself kind of radically redesigning your job. What you're doing is you're taking your job that you've got at the moment and then making changes to it to make it a better, more comfortable fit. So you can't change the substance of your role. You're not fundamentally creating a new role. You're just improving the job that you already have. And when I talk about job crafting, one of the things that I often say is you can think about it as just trying to personalize your job a little bit and finding a 1% improvement to make your job better for you as an individual. So job crafting is around making small changes to your job, not making big changes to what you're doing. So briefly, I'm going to talk to you about three things. I'm going to kind of explain why we should bring personalization into work. And I know Dan's got some views, and we've talked about personalization before. I'm going to then talk a little bit more about job crafting and where it came from, and then I'm going to share some stories about how we can bring this concept to life. So the first thing I want to kind of explore with you is why we should personalize work, why we should be interested in personalizing our work. So if you think about it, we can personalize any and every aspect of our lives, from our cars to our clothes to the shakes that we can get delivered to us at our desks, our coffees. All aspects of our lives we can personalize. We can personalize our scooters. This is a picture of a ZZ suit, and if you haven't seen this before, it's coming to you soon. So this is a suit that you can put on, and you get through the post, and then you scan yourself and do a 360-degree turn, and your phone will pick up your individual measurements, and then you'll get customized kind of clothes sent to you to your door. Amazon have a patent for something very similar to this, so it's coming to us all very, very soon. So this is kind of, we have this ability to personalize kind of everything around us, yet we often don't get encouraged to personalize our workplaces. And again, job crafting, personalization is something I want to say we should be bringing this to our workplaces. And there's three studies or three ideas I want to share with you when it comes to personalization. Two of them are academic studies, and one of them is not. It's related to me watching too much television. So the first study relates to IKEA, and this is a study by Mike Norton and colleagues, and they got the two groups of participants. Participant group number one, they asked them to build some boxes, build the stationary boxes you can see on the left-hand side. So these are boxes that you kept paper inside. They asked them to build these boxes, and then they asked the participants to value how much they thought these boxes were worth. And so that was the kind of group one, and you can think about these as the builders. So the builders. Group two, the group of participants, they came in and they asked them to inspect the boxes. So the boxes had already been made for this group, so they didn't have to build them. The box was ready made. They just got to look at inspect the box. So both groups, at the end of the experiment, both had the same design of a box that they could look at, and the inspectors were then asked to place a bid on how much they thought it was worth. And so the builders got to build the box and then inspect it, look at it, and the inspectors just came in and they looked at the boxes ready made. One of those groups valued the boxes twice as much as the other group in terms of how much they thought it was worth. And I'd like you to guess now whether you thought it was the builders who valued it the most, or the inspectors. So can you put a B or an I in the chat function, please? If you thought the builders valued it more, press a B. If you thought the inspectors built it more, put an I. Okay, so we're seeing some answers in, and a lot of you are guessing the right answer. So the builders, they valued it more. And yet this, if you think about it, this is not logical. Logically, the inspectors, the people who came in and had the boxes made for them, should value it more because they didn't have to go through any effort to build the boxes in the first instance. They were already ready made. Yet we know from research in lots of different areas and fields that when people feel that they've been involved in building something, when they've got their fingertips on something, their fingerprints on that task, they value it more. And when you think about your jobs, when you think about the workplace, if you encourage people to build their jobs, to personalize them, they will value it more than a job that they just feel that's off the shelf. If you give someone a generic job and they don't personalize it, they won't value it any different from any other job. Yet if you give them the job and you allow them to build it and create it and personalize it, then they would value it more. So that's one study. The second study, and this is from Ulrike Kaiser and colleagues, a joint study from business schools in Vienna and Miami in the States. And they got two groups of participants involving a study involving pens. So they asked participants to design a pen to be used by the university to try and recruit new students. and they asked participants to come in and use some software to put some logos and design the color of the pen. They then asked this group to come in 2 weeks later to inspect the pen and say whether they liked it or not. So all the participants designed the pen using some software. They chose the colors, they chose the logo, and they were then asked to come in 2 weeks later to inspect the pen. Group one, so one group of participants, were given the pen that they designed. So they'd actually, the academics had produced the pen and they'd given it to the participants and said, here, have the pen. Can you please check how good the quality of the pen itself in terms of how well it's made? And the way you can test this is I'll give you this piece of paper, and this piece of paper had some puzzles on it, some tests on it for the participants to fill in and complete and test the pen. The second group of participants came in and they said, we're really sorry, there's been a mistake, there's been a delay, we couldn't produce your pen. Here's a pen someone else has made. So they were using the same pen, but it didn't have their colors, their logos. It was designed by someone else. And they said, can you just test the quality of the pen? And what they found, interestingly, they found that the people who were using the pen that they designed valued the pen more. They thought it was a better pen than those who were using a pen that someone else had designed. But they also measured how long they spent doing these puzzles they'd given them and how accurate they were in the puzzles that they'd been given by the academics to test the pen out. And they found that the people who were using the pens that they had designed themselves spent more time doing the tasks, and they were more accurate doing the tasks than those that had just been using someone else's pen. So there was this element of personalization as an advantage through using a personalized product. And we know through sports and through other arenas that people perform better or performing better when they use personalized products or goods. So footballers use personalized running football boots, or Usain Bolt had kind of personalized running shoes. And they not only do they look good, but they actually have a performance benefit as well. And again, when it comes to the workplace, when we personalize our work, we tend to perform better. So research shows that when people job craft, when they personalize their jobs, not only do they report feeling better, you feel that you're performing better in your job, but their line managers say they perform better. And even their customers say that the people who craft their jobs are more likely to give better customer service than those that don't. And then lastly, the study, the last box results to someone who I'm not sure if anyone knows, and can again on the chat, does anyone recognize the picture on the right hand side of who that is? And this question, does it spark joy? Does anyone recognize that person? I'll just see on the chat. So these are coming through, but this person is Mary Jen from accounting. Joe, it's not Jen from accounting. Yeah, so Ties van Loon, so forgive me if I got your name wrong there, Ties, but thanks, as Marie Kondo. Yeah, so Marie Kondo helps people sort through their belongings. She's a declutterer, I think is the term. And the way that she encourages people to do this is by picking up an item in their house and saying, does it bring me joy? Does it spark joy or not? So you've got lots of things in your house, and if you want to kind of declutter them, to get rid of things, you hold up an item and you say, does this bring me joy? And what you tend to find when I've watched lots of these programs, they're very addictive, is that the people hold on to things that they feel are personal to them, that they feel has a personal story or connection to them as an individual. They value them more. It sparks joy in them. And again, I would say that's the same when it comes to job crafting and personalizing work. When people are able to personalize their jobs, they tend to enjoy and value their job more than those that they haven't personalized, that are a generic off-the-shelf job. So again, these are kind of three reasons why I think we should be personalizing work and why we should be bringing kind of job crafting to life. And so my takeaways from this is that people may like the things they're given, they value the things that they build, and they love the things that they create. So that's the kind of the kind of key takeaways that I want to give to you. And so I would love you to think about, as a leader or as a business owner here, to what extent do you allow people to personalize and shape their jobs, and to what extent do you actively invite people to do this? We'll share some ideas of how to do this in a second, but I'd love you to be thinking about that, saying, to what extent do I build boxes and give people boxes in terms of their jobs that they do, maybe with the best of intentions, and to what extent do I allow people to help build solutions, build their jobs? So when you think about job crafting, my definition, or the statement I often give to people is the one you're seeing on screen now. So I see job crafting as enabling and encouraging people to bring the best selves to the workplace. It celebrates and recognizes and taps into our diversity, our differences, and enables us to bring our kind of best selves to work each day. It recognizes that we're all different. Every single one of us on the planet is different. And rather than expecting us to act in exactly the same way, job crafting allows and recognizes us all to be different, and sees that as a sense of competitive advantage rather than a threat. So job crafting encourages people to bring their strengths, brings their passions, bring their interests to the workplace, for the benefit of themselves, for the benefit of their colleagues, and for the benefit of the organizations that you're building. And this is a quote from an employee who went through some workshops that I run. So the Tailored Thinking run a lot of workshops with organizations, and we kind of evaluate how people have used job crafting and the effectiveness. And this is a quote someone gave to us afterwards, and in terms of the importance of job crafting. And they said, what was so powerful about having job crafting conversations with my organization and my manager was that it recognized me as not just a cog in the machine. I wasn't just a number. I was actually being seen and recognized as me, as an individual, as a person. They said here, you want and value me being me. And I think, again, that's incredibly powerful. If you want to motivate people, if you want to engage people, they want to be seen, they want to be recognized, and they want their ambitions to be heard. And having job crafting conversations with people about saying, what do you love about your job? What don't you like about your job? How could you improve your job? These are ways of you showing that you care about the individual. And again, Dan, maybe at the end of the session, we can talk about some examples of when you've seen this as well, because we talked about this yesterday and I really enjoyed it. Job crafting and the University Cleaning Group. So job crafting was first written about in 2001. I'm not going to go in too much into the history of this, and there's a great video that I've linked in terms of resources by the first researcher who wrote about job crafting, which was Amy Wisniewski and Jane Dutton. And these two colleagues were investigating employee engagement. So they were interested about what made people engaged at work. And they were doing some studies of a university hospital. And they found that university cleaners were doing exactly the same role, but some people were scoring very highly on terms of their engagement, and some people were scoring very low, very low in terms of engagement. They were really curious about this. Why were people doing the same job scoring differently in terms of engagement? So they interviewed them, and they found that one group of individuals saw their jobs as being very low status and menial and very low paid, and they were the people who gave it a very low engagement score. And other people reported their job as saying, actually, my job is to help people recover, is to create a sterile and clean environment for people, which is important for people's recovery and recuperation. And they saw their role as being fundamental to that. So they scored more highly in terms of the engagement. But they also found that these cleaners who saw their jobs as having a more important purpose, who valued and enjoyed their work more, also did small things in their day to make their job more personal to them. So one cleaner described changing the pictures in the corridors as they were cleaning them to make a more interesting environment. One cleaner described every day looking out for people who look lost in the hospital corridors to navigate them to the right place, because the hospitals are very confusing places to visit, and they wanted to be a positive influence, a positive source of connection for people. And so they were looking out for people as they were going through. Another person said that every day they would try and make eye contact and smile at least two patients, because it was important for them to help patients recover, and they could see that they could make a positive connection with other people. And the researchers called this job crafting. They were saying they were doing these really small things, subtle changes, such as changing the pictures and the corridors, such as helping people who got lost, such as making eye contact with people. So they're doing very small things, but they were crafting their jobs in a way that made their jobs more interesting for them and a better reflection of who they were as individuals. They were people who cared about other people, and their behaviors and actions mirrored that in the work that they did. And I'm going to show you now a video on screen of an example of job crafting in action by David Holmes. So forgive me, I'm just going to take a second to get this working. Okay. And people can see that, hopefully, and hear this. If you can't, then let me know.
72, service to Oklahoma City. When David Holmes used to give the pre-flight instructions, the passengers would tune out and glaze over. Not anymore. We're going to shake things up a little bit.
I take them by surprise. I usually don't tell them that I'm going to do it.
And to do it,
You guys with me? All right. So it's going to be a stomp, clap, clap.
David needs a little audience participation to pull it off.
There you go. Keep that going. This is flight 372 on SWA. The flight attendants on board serving you today. Teresa in the middle, David in the back. My name is David, and I'm here to tell you that. The first time I did it, it's really just because it was just a fun thing to do. If you have a seat on the road with the exit, we're going to talk to you, so you might as well expect it. You got to help evacuate in case we need you. If you don't want to, then we're going to reseat you. I didn't know how they were going to react, but I was in a good mood, and I like to have fun at work. But then people started getting off the plane telling me, that's the first time I ever listened to the emergency instructions. Before we leave, our advice is put away your electronic devices. Fasten your seatbelt, then put your trays up, press the button to make the seat back raise up.
David was discovered by a passenger who recorded his rap on her cell phone and said she was going to put it on YouTube.
And I said, I dare you. And 2 days later, she did it. And 2 days after that, it was already over 2,000 hits at the time.
Now David is a YouTube sensation, and he's been doing the rap ever since, to rave reviews.
Sit back, relax, have a good time.
Never experienced a rap in flight attendant. It's pretty awesome.
Pretty easy.
And I don't like rap, and I really like that. That was pretty good.
Thank you for the fact that I wasn't ignored. This is Southwest Airlines. Welcome aboard.
Okay. So I share that. It feels like it's a couple of years out of date now, that video, but it's a good introduction in terms of how of bringing job crafting to life. So it feels out of date because the phones look a bit out of date. People were saying that only a few hundred hits on YouTube, you get thousands now. And obviously also people were traveling without wearing face masks, which is very different. And now you'd expect people to be wearing face masks all the time. So the reason I wanted to share that video is because it's fun. You don't have to job craft by rap. So Dan, I'm not expecting Amir. You don't have to rap to your members next time you speak to them. It could be fun, if you wanted to do that, but you don't have to do that. But I do want you to think about some of the outcomes from that video. So forgive me, I'm just getting this to come up. I'll do that again. There we go. So that was David Holmes at Southwest Airlines. And the reason I like that video is because it was fun, but also it gives shows four attributes that I see when it comes to job crafting in terms of what's important to job crafting. So the number one thing when it comes to job crafting is it's personal. Job crafting has to come from within the individual. It's not something you can force on an individual. You have to encourage them to do it. So David was saying he enjoys kind of rap. It's something that he does in his spare time. So it's something very unique to him as an individual. You couldn't ask someone else to go in and rap the flight briefing announcement. It wouldn't work. It has to come from within. And so job crafting has to kind of be driven by the individual themselves. The second thing that I note around and see often in job crafting is that it's experimental. So you don't know quite what's going to happen when you job craft. You don't know whether it's going to work positively or whether it's going to work negatively. You think it's going to work well, but you don't know. And so David brought this playful experimentation idea to life. He said, I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought it was quite fun, but I just didn't know. I was just testing it out. So it's this idea of testing something out, job crafting. It doesn't have to be for life. You're encouraging people to make a change to their jobs in a way that's a small change that will hopefully make their job a little bit better, but you just don't know. You've got to be experimental about this to test it. The third factor is that the job crafting change was quite small. So David would have had to have given the pre-flight announcement anyway, so it didn't actually change the footprint of his job or the size of his job very much at all. And research I've done with academics have looked at the size and scale of job crafting, and the majority of job crafting, when I've measured it through workshops that we've done, has actually been things that have taken maybe 10 minutes a day or an hour a week. So it's not something that has to radically redefine or change your job. Some people have crafted their jobs in ways that have led to bigger changes, but most job crafting, when people do it, I encourage them to start small. Think about the smallest possible change you can make to your job and just do it. So again, if you're listening to this and you're either thinking about job crafting yourself or job crafting for your colleagues, think about having conversations about what's the smallest way we can improve your job. What's the smallest way you can make your job better, make it a better reflection of who you are and the values you hold. And then the fourth point of the video, and the fourth point that I see when it comes to job crafting, is that it leads to unexpected outcomes. So what we found here, David was saying, I did the job crafting. I wrapped the announcement because I thought it'd be fun and I wanted to do it. But he said, actually, what happened is that people enjoyed it and people listened to the instructions in a way that they'd said they'd never listened to them before. And often I find when it comes to job crafting, people have unexpected outcomes. So it doesn't always necessarily just impact positively on the individual, but it can positively impact on their colleagues, and it can positively impact on their customers too, in some instances. So I was talking to someone recently, and they'd done some job crafting in the fact that some well-being crafting. So they wanted to make their job healthier. Because they wanted to get more activity in their job. They spend a lot of time in their desks. So they decided they were going to have walking meetings with their colleagues. And in the UK at the moment, we can't meet in person. We're still, because of COVID restrictions, we're not able to meet in offices and in person. So they decided to have a virtual walking meeting where they would listen, put their earbuds in, and they would have a conversation with their colleague. And their other colleague would put from their house, or their flat, they would put their earbuds in, and they would go for a walk around the block of their flat as well. So they both had a conversation and they were both walking. So the reason they did this was because they wanted to get more exercise in the day. They wanted to kind of get their step count up. But what they found from doing this was that they found that they had a more fun conversation. They were more creative. They listened to each other more. They were kind of more focused on what each other was saying. So the whole conversation improved because they were doing it in this different way. And yet this wasn't the expected outcome of this job crafting. The job crafting change was just purely to do their job in a different way to make it healthier for them. Yet it led to kind of unexpected incomes in that way. So some of you may think, well, I do job crafting. I've seen people being job crafting by being proactive, and by being proactive, it means that you're kind of maybe shaping what you do. So you're very good at, or you'll know people are very good at shaping and redesigning their tasks and activities. That's not quite the same as job crafting. So job crafting involves you being proactive, but it's subtly different. If you think about two runners in the street, if you see a runner in the street, two runners in the street, one of them may be running because they want to just to get outside for no reason. They're doing it just for pure health, and they've got no reason for their run other than the fact it feels good for them, and that's good. But there's no wider purpose or significance to that run they're having in the street. You might see another runner in the street, and they look exactly the same as the other runner, but actually they're running, but they're training for a 5-kilometer race or a 10-kilometer race or a half marathon or something. So they have a wider purpose in mind for their run. Their run is to get some exercise, but additionally there's additional purpose to it. And the same comes to job crafting. So job crafting looks like being proactive around shaping your job, about volunteering for new activities and doing things. But job crafting has a purpose behind it, because you're being proactive deliberately to try and make your job a better fit to you as an individual. So job crafting is being proactive, but also being deliberate in terms of trying to get a positive outcome for yourself, in terms of making a positive change that's going to make your job better. So it's slightly different than just being proactive. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, then people can ask me questions about that later on. So this is a model of job crafting that I put together for my book, and there's 3 different stages of this this model. So the middle of the circle is green, and this refers to the why of job crafting. Why does it matter? And we've already talked about some of the benefits, and the research shows that it's linked to thriving, to well-being. It's linked to professional and personal growth. So people who feel more happier in their careers and in their jobs, people who go higher in their careers and jobs, have more promotions, and tend to be related to job crafting. And also it's linked to performance, as we said, in terms of individual, team, and organizational performance. So that's why job crafting matters, why you should be interested in it as a business, as an employee. The next level for job crafting, the orange outer ring, is the what of job crafting. So what is job crafting, and how do people do it? So job crafting, there's no fixed way to job craft. Everyone does it in different ways, but people tend to do it in with five different motivations. So they do it in with five different areas of focus. So one may be the first is around changing people's tasks. So this is changing the tasks and activities that you do. So it may be volunteering for new tasks and activities. It may be changing how you do an existing task, or it could be even stopping doing certain tasks and activities. So it's changing your tasks and activities. The second relates to your skills. So this is around how you can develop new knowledge and skills, maybe redefine new skills, maybe volunteering to do something differently. So we talked about an example yesterday with Dan, and we was talking about someone maybe within Dreamplex who's got an interest in HR, and so they've got a skill in HR and passion. They were studying this, and they were interested about how they could learn more HR skills within their job, how they could refine this and broaden and develop their HR knowledge and skills in their existing job. So this is an example of skill crafting. Thirdly, there's purpose crafting, and purpose crafting is around connecting to the purpose and value of the work that you're doing. There's nothing more demotivating. There's nothing more that feels rubbish than doing work where we feel there's no purpose or impact to it. So purpose crafting is a way of connecting the job that you do to the outcomes, the impact that you have with other people. So we talked about the hospital cleaners. The hospital cleaners were changing maybe the pictures around the corridors because they wanted, the purpose behind it was because they wanted to make a more stimulating environment, because they cared about people. For me, when I'm speaking to you, I don't naturally always love speaking to people. I find it quite draining. But I really, the way I motivate myself to talk to you today and through screens is because I'm passionate about sharing ideas and knowledge. And I recognize that's the purpose of this activity. So I recognize that, yes, I find talking to you now tiring, but I get the motivation to do that because I'm passionate about the purpose behind it. So it's around encouraging individuals to think about what they're passionate about and tapping into that. The fourth way people job craft is through relationships. So this is around building relationships and connections with people that matter to you within the workplace. That could be your colleagues and co-workers. It could be your customers and finding ways to connect with your kind of customers. And it could be anyone else that you deal with within your work. It could be making more relationships with other people within Dreamplex and other organizations that are there. So around building your networks and communities. So it's finding ways to build those relationships and improve your relationships with other people. And then lastly, there's well-being crafting. So this is around how you can boost your well-being from a mental or a physical perspective. And I gave you that example of having walking meetings. It may be that you try and find ways to kind of walk up the stairs rather than take the lift every day because you want to kind of bring more activity in terms of what you're doing. Or it could be that you are good at not checking your email late at night because you're realizing that that's that's actually not allowing you to sleep very well, and you're not very effective in doing your work late at night. So it's around designing your work in a way that boosts your well-being and your impact. And I've given you lots of examples of how people can job craft, and maybe just one example here, and I can talk about more elsewhere. Recently, I came across someone who was trying to, someone who works in customer services, and they were dealing with a number of responses and issues from customers on the telephone and by chats and chat boxes. And what they decided to do was, because they were getting lots of queries on the same theme, is that they were interested about maybe recording some short videos and tutorials for people about some of the customer issues they had with some of the products and services people were using. So rather than, they recorded a video of themselves talking about some of the issues that the customers were saying they had problems with in terms of their service and products, to make it easier to use. And this person said they really enjoyed learning a new skill in terms of video production. It didn't take them a lot of time, and it didn't change their job fundamentally, but it was just a new skill that they developed. And their customers benefited from it too, because they could find videos that gave answers to some of the most common problems that they solved. So that's an example there. Just to give you some impact of some real world studies. So I've done some work at, say, Virgin Money, a big bank in the UK. And when they encourage people to job craft, they found that 98% of people would recommend kind of learning about job crafting to their colleagues. So this was something that they're saying this is a really useful skill, something to be aware of. 82% of people actually implemented. So when we've run workshops with people, or when we encourage people to work to job craft, we find that the majority of people want to put this in action. And it makes sense, because most people want to make their job better, right? Most people want to make their job better. There was a 16% increase in satisfaction, and a 14% increase in people saying they liked working for Virgin Money, which was amazing results and impact. And this is another impact case study from Connect Health, where we collected more data and studies. This project actually led to kind of significant savings in turnover. So in terms of reductions of people leaving the organization, and they were worried about retention levels. They had a physiotherapy company, and they were looking at trying to stop physiotherapists from leaving. So these were people who helped provide medical support to patients, and they were a very scarce skill resource. So there's a lot of competition for them. So they found that job crafting enabled them to hold on to these people, and led to a reduction in positive things such as sickness absence. There was an increase in people's ratings as a great place to work. And also there was a really interesting, from a career perspective, 24% of people reported that, well, there was a 24% uplift in people saying Connect Health supports my career aspirations, because they were having more personal conversations about how they could craft their jobs, make their careers and jobs more interesting. And on the right hand side of this slide are just some examples of how people in Connect Health, some organizations, job crafted. So someone started a breakfast club to connect. Some people were listening to physio themed podcasts to Skillcraft to learn more skills. Someone wanted to get more connected to their purpose of their job, so they wanted to feel they're helping people, so they kept a diary of the best patient experiences that day, the people that helped the most that day. And I've seen people on call centers, if any of you work in contact centers or dealing with a lot of customers and dealing with a lot of complaints, it can be really good at the end of the day just to write down who's the person you've helped the most that day, or the person you've had the best interaction with, because it focuses your mind on the good that you're doing rather than just thinking about all the problems that you've had. So I'm going to give you some examples of bringing job crafting to life and how to do this. When it comes to job crafting, you want to create opportunities for people to think about how they can add more to their job or grow areas they like, how you can take away from things that people don't enjoy doing, how you can reduce them or prevent this from happening, how you can change and improve and adapt the existing elements of your job, what you can hold on to and keep, what really matters to you in terms of making sure that you don't lose that because it's something you really value. So if you really value customer relation and engagement with other people and speaking to your customers, you need to make sure you hold on to that and find opportunities to do that every week, because if you do that, you're more likely to be engaged with what you do. And also maybe think about other things in your job that you can completely stop doing or pausing or resisting, saying, I absolutely need to kind of stop these things from coming to my job because they just take away from my experience. And we can do this in lots of different ways. So there's digital exercises and activities and training that you can do digitally that anyone can do kind of around the world. The Taylor Thinking develops some training that you can develop. There's workshops where you encourage people to learn about job crafting. There's team crafting where you get groups together and you collectively discuss how you can craft and change your jobs and reallocate jobs amongst yourselves. You can encourage one-to-one discussion so that as a manager and individual, you can have job crafting conversations between the two of you and saying, how can you make your job better? And there's a job canvas. So a job canvas is a new way of looking at your job description. So job descriptions put people in boxes. If you think about that glass box we talked about at the start of the session, a job canvas is a way of people writing down the key elements of their job in a much more agile, much more flexible and adaptable way. And I'm noting that I've got 4 minutes left. I'll chat them. We'll have some questions. So an exercise that you can do yourself after this session, or you can do with your team, that I recommend helps think about job crafting, is called the love and loathe exercise. So for this, you'll need some pens, you'll need a post-it note, and some post-it notes and a piece of paper, or your desk, or a wall. You can do this on a wall. And what you do is you write down your 10 to 15 key tasks that you have, and then you plot them on this graph. So you write down the key things that you do, and then you put them on this graph. So are there things that you spend that drain you of energy, and what are the things that give you energy? So Ming asked me at the start of this, what's the thing that fills you with energy? The thing that fills me with energy is absolutely speaking to people about how they've applied the ideas that I share with people. That's the thing that gives me a lot of energy. Unfortunately, I don't spend as much time doing that as I'd like to. So this would be, I would score this on the kind of bottom right of this chart. And for job crafting, you want to think about two areas. So you want to think about the activities that you're spending a lot of time doing that drain you or your team of energy. You want to think about, can you stop doing them? Can you reduce it somehow? Can you redesign that activity so you find it more fun and more engaging? The other thing to look at is around things that give you energy and you don't spend a lot of time doing. What is it about your job that you love doing? And trying to think about, are there ways that you can do more of this? Is it that you have a love for learning? You love learning new things? Is it that you like building relationships with new people? Is it that you love talking to your customers? What is it about your job that you like doing? And then finding ways to do more of this in terms of your job. That's a great way to start for job crafting. And this is an example of a canvas. So this is a different way of looking at your job description. So rather than having a job description, you can think about having your job as a job canvas. And this is at the heart of this job canvas is the value that you place on your job. And then the right-hand side of this, you're recording your service standards, the customers you engage with, the outputs of your job. And on the left-hand side are all the things that are the key elements of your job, the inputs of your job, the activities you do, the people you interact with, the resources you do. And at the bottom of this, your skills and resources, or your key deliverables and KPIs. And what I find when people use the canvas is that they can complete it really quickly, but they can also update it really regularly, so that it's something that actually your job will continually evolve and change. And the job canvas allows you to keep updating your canvas so that it shows what you're doing in your job on a day-to-day basis, rather than having a fixed job description that you can't change and you can't develop. And it's something to look at. Okay, so I'm just closing now, just because these are some ideas, and we'll talk more of these going through. Just to highlight, and this is on the guide in terms of the on the guide for the notes, and I'll send you a link to this. There's a new job crafting guide that we've just launched. We haven't gone public with this yet, so next week or later on this week we'll be going public with it, and you can have a sneak preview of our guide if you want to. So it's tailoredthinking.co.uk job crafting guide. To have a look at this if you want to, where we've got more information and stories about job crafting. And my takeaways for you, as I'm coming just at the end, is to say, think about creating work that creates freedom and flexibility in terms of what you're doing, rather than being fixed and fixated. Don't box people in, allow them to personalize their jobs. The other thing to take away from this is that great jobs and careers aren't found, they're made. So people, when they've got amazing careers and jobs they're proud of, it's not because they've just found them, they've been really, really lucky. It's because when you speak to them, they've created them from the inside. So they've crafted them. So this is what I want you to do with your job, and have these conversations with your colleagues. And then lastly, we need to move away from this idea of treating individuality as a threat. We need to think about individuality, our differences, our diversity as a source of competitive and compassionate advantage. That's what we need to be doing. If you do that, if you embrace our individuality, if you embrace the skills and the passions of your people who work with you and they work with you, have an impact on you as a business, but also your customers as well. So I'd like to say thank you at this stage, and we're going to go into questions. And I really appreciated your time and attention and engagement. So thanks so much.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you, Rob, for your sharing. So nice to hear all the things that, and I hope that my leaders, my boss can hear it as well, because I'm so into the personalization at work. Okay, so I will give you like 2 minutes for break. So I will go into Dan, because like Dan has something to share right now. How Dreamlex, how you bring the personalization at work to Dreamlex, Dan?
Thanks, Mia, for putting me on the spot. Well, I'll say something very shortly, but first, a huge thank you to Rob for his sharing, and especially hearing that it exhausts you to talk so much to people. Very much appreciate the time that you spent today in your sharing with us. So actually, I have one of the questions that came from the audience that was submitted before the webinar. I thought would actually be a really interesting one to share with you. But maybe to Mia's question about kind of how do we apply it, I kind of liked the 4 principles that you said about job crafting, and especially the one around starting small. So I think job crafting wouldn't really work for us if we made it this like really big thing that, you know, even like really junior team members, like we sit them down and we say, okay, let's roll up our sleeves and let's job craft, right? But rather we just start really small and we just say, let's just talk through your job. Like just write down maybe 10 or 20 things that you do on a daily basis. And then let's talk about those like 10 or 20 things. And like, what are the things that, you know, maybe cost you a lot of time and a lot of energy? And maybe what are the things that, you know, like don't cost you that much time, but give you a lot of energy, right? And then you're starting to sort of see the Harry Potter sorting hat going on, where you can say, okay, well, in that case, you know, why don't I do more of the things that, you know, less time, you know, and it provides me more energy? And why do I do less of the things that like really I have to force myself to do it? So I think these just small conversations, they don't have to be so formal, work really well for us. So that's from our side. Then one really interesting question that I saw from one of the participants of the webinar today is Min Phup, who is the Learning and Development Manager at ADP. And she asked, what is the dark side of job crafting?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question, Ming Fu. Is it Ming Fu? So that's thank you for that question. There is definitely, I think the dark side to job crafting is the fact that if people craft their jobs in ways that doesn't benefit other people. So I think sometimes if there isn't the opportunity for people to craft their jobs, and what will happen is that some people will do this anyway. So whether you like it or not, some people will just personalize their jobs, but they may do it in ways that doesn't necessarily benefit, or they'll do it in ways that benefits them without thinking about how it benefits their customers, and they'll think about how it doesn't benefit their colleagues as well. So they will do it because they do as a way of coping for their job, maybe, or because they're very bored in what they're doing, but they'll do it purely for themselves. Yet, if you invite people to have more open conversations about job crafting, what I often get people to think about is how it benefits themselves, or the impact on themselves, the benefits on their teams, and the benefits of their organization. So rather than doing it kind of hidden, furtively, in ways that maybe doesn't support the business and the organization, is they have to do it more openly. They can have conversations and think about, actually, how's this going to impact on my colleagues? How's this going to impact on other people? So, for example, if you are someone who works in customer services and you have to complete a CRM, so in terms of your kind of management system, and you may not like completing you find it really boring and dull to do that. A way of crafting that, a way of coping with that, is to do it the real bare minimum and not completing it at all. You know, not putting anything in it because you hate doing it. So you might do that, but actually, if you do that, that'll hurt the business, that'll hurt your colleagues because they don't have a good record of of the databases that's happening. So that wouldn't be a great starting point. But what you can do through crafting conversations is thinking about what is it about that task that you hate doing? Is there maybe a way that you can do it on certain times of the day that you've got more energy to do it? Or can you find a way of introducing some shorthand or some getting better at writing your notes so that it takes less time, and exploring that aspect of what is it you don't like about it? So that's the dark side, I think, is when you don't have conversations about it, when people just do things that are going to benefit them without thinking about how they benefit their individuals. And then just to pick up on Dan, the other point you mentioned about having small conversations, I think sometimes we don't know what people like and don't like about their jobs. Like you were saying, you didn't know, I didn't necessarily, doesn't fill me up talking to people. I value having done this, but it's not something that I enjoy in the moment. And if we hadn't had this conversation, you wouldn't have known that. And there's probably lots of things that we don't know about our colleagues in terms of what they love and what they don't like, unless we ask them. And so again, I'd encourage you to have the conversations. It's great that at Dreamplex you're having those conversations with colleagues about it.
So there's a lot of kind of, from a management perspective, so we have a lot of like really senior HR people on the line, very senior leaders. So from that perspective, it seems like we need to just get more personal with our teams as well.
And sure, I think the best way to encourage job crafting or personalization is to create the space for reflection and the space for a conversation. And you can do this as a group, as a team, or you can do this kind of individually, but you need the individual to give the person permission, an individual the permission, as you said, the exercise of just saying what you like and don't like about the job. You just need a bit of time to do that, and then to show an active interest in someone's answers. And yet we don't, when we're busy, we think about the tasks we're doing and not how we do them. And I think, again, job crafting encourages, and personalization encourages to think about how do we do those tasks rather than just focusing on the actual doing of them. So you need to create time and space to do it. And it's not difficult or challenging. It's just starting with the conversation.
Okay, hey Rob, I also have a question from myself, but I see that someone here is please, it's HRPP from Sticky. Yes, she's also asking the same questions like I did. It's like all the HR people try to standardize all the work. So how would like job crafting and experience affect the standardization and of people operations? So how to balance this? Like the questions I asked you, but what is the limitations of that?
Yeah, so that's a really good challenge. And I'm not saying that you allow everyone to do everything. There needs to be common kind of barriers or kind of common approaches in terms of what you're doing. The way that I think about job crafting is that you're maybe changing 2% of a role, or maybe 5 to 10% of a role in terms of the personalization. So 95% of it is standardized. So that job description for the HR person, that's the same for everyone. You're very clear on what you're trying to achieve, what the outcomes, what are the key elements of it. But you're creating a bit of space at the top of the job description, maybe 5%, to allow someone to personalize and tailor their role. And that may be doing something different on you, or it may be spending more time doing the things that they enjoy of their job, doing more of that rather than and doing less of the things they don't enjoy. So it's maybe thinking about it not as redesigning what you've got, but just having your existing role and creating a bit of space in there for people to do something maybe different, try something new, or doing more of the things that they enjoy doing in different ways. So that's how I encourage people to look at it. And again, a good question to think about when it comes to job crafting is, how's this going to impact on you? How's this going to impact on your colleagues? And how's this going to impact on the role in the business? So when you're asking someone to craft their job, you need to think about whether it's sustainable for that individual, whether they're going to enjoy it. If you're really stressed out and busy and you end up doing more things, that's not going to be sustainable for you because you're already very busy. You need to think about, actually, is that realistic? How's it going to impact on your colleagues? You can't just do something, stop doing something if your colleagues rely on it. That's not reasonable, or it's not responsible. And similarly, you need to think about, actually, is the crafting change going to impact and positively support the business or your role in some ways? And so I encourage people to think about it in those different elements.
Thanks, Rob. I think Dan has questions for you.
Yeah, so again, we have a wonderful list of questions coming from the audience that were submitted beforehand. And I see Tao is on the line from New Energy Nexus.
Hi, Tao.
She has an amazing job title. It's called Accelerator Program Manager. Maybe Tao, like if you want to raise your hand and tell us what that means, it will be very interesting. But basically, Tao's question is, how can job crafting contribute to HR excellence?
Wow, that's a good question, Tao. So my perspective, my thoughts are that HR excellence is around enabling people to perform at their best. That's what we should be doing as a function. We should be working with the organization to allow people to be at their best within the organization, to create great performance and to enjoy themselves as they can, have good well-being and happiness as part of that. But for me, it's around having great performance. And as I said at the start, in terms of personalization is a way that I think we overlook in HR of actually allowing people to perform at their best. When we look at when people have performed at their best in different elements of our lives, it's when they're using personalized, they're doing it in a personalized way. And yet we don't bring that into our way of thinking in organizations and HR. We do it in a very standardized way. So the way that we can bring excellence into HR, for your question, is around taking a more personalized approach, creating a more personalized people experience. So for me, a personalized people experience is the future of HR and what we should be striving for.
So you're saying very shockingly that in order to get personalized work, we need to be more personal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the starting point is having these conversations. It's really not that. I'd like to believe it's more complicated than that, but it's around actually starting to have conversations, to thinking about what flexibility you have in terms of your existing roles, to being a bit more experimental in terms of how you do things, to ask people to question constantly how they can make things better for themselves and for their colleagues. So in terms of how they can improve their jobs, how they can improve the work that they do for other people. It's very much linked to agile ways of working. It's very much linked to ideas such as continuous improvement. It's just bringing that to the work that you're doing.
Okay, so cool. I think one of the things that Dan learned for today is doing something by rap. It's more interesting. Yes,
you should definitely try that, Mia. You should definitely try rapping the next webinar you have. You should do that.
Okay, I would try because I love rap. So okay, so I have one question that was hand before the webinar is that are there any tools that you apply for tailor thinking in job crafting?
Yeah, so there's lots of different tools. So people can look at our website. So in terms of for finding them out, the love and loathe exercise I find to be a really good one. The one I showed in the webinar, and you can do that kind of virtually. You can do that in Teams. It's a really good starting point. The job canvas that I shared with people is something that I think is I'm seeing more organizations looking at it. They're looking at it as a different way to look at job descriptions. Job descriptions haven't changed in, again, probably hundreds of years, and a job canvas is a very different way of looking at your job description. And you can do this online, so I can use that as an approach. I can just quickly share with you actually that if I share my screen. So this is a kind of job canvas where you can get people to kind of update details about their job, the value they have, and then kind of move them around and print off a PDF or keep a record of this, so that the HR team have a record of people's job descriptions and the roles that they have, and then encourage people to have kind of active conversations about jobs and the jobs that they do. So that's the job canvas. And I would encourage people to also think about, if you're really interested in investing in this kind of further, to exploring it, is testing it out. So when I start with an organization, I often encourage people to test it with 2 or 3 of their teams to see actually whether people can job craft, whether it works within their organization. So rather than going big bang and doing it for everyone, actually take an evidence-based approach, collect some data, think about, does this impact on the team? Does it work well within our organization? And then to move beyond that. So you might want to invest in some workshops or some activities to encourage job crafting before you kind of you broaden it out further.
So to finish for today, just one question. Are you going to talk about the job design too?
Pardon? Say that again, me.
Are you going to talk about the job design too?
Yeah, job design. Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so we'll see about that. We're
Yeah.
looking forward to it. Thank you, Rob, for today, joining virtually from the UK. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Dan, for joining us. So we will send you the slide via the email, okay? Especially for Dreamlex members. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. It's been great. You've been a great audience. Thank you so much.
Yes.